It was initially, and I'll talk about the very first morning I meet him. I said I arrived at 3 o'clock in the morning. I knew they were going to be at 4, so I just jumped in the back of my rental and threw a cleaning bag. You know, I never wore suits. I hated suits. I still do hate suits. So I climbed in the back, and the lights come on. The guys are coming out. I climb out of the car, and the first words out of Doug, his best friend who drove the van, looked at me, and he went with quite astonishment, "You're the guy from the Cancer Society?" Because everybody else they were dealing with, I was 33, and everybody else they had been dealing with were in their, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and all suit wearers. And I'm the guy who's come from Ontario to help.
Right.
And then I watched him that first morning. We drove out in the van into the darkness, Trans-Canada Highway, which I don't know, I think maybe the same way. It was simply a 2-lane. It was not a 4-lane divided highway. No traffic except once in a while a transport truck roaring by. And Doug drives out into the darkness, and he's driving back and forth really slowly, and I don't know what he's doing. And what he was looking for was a white shopping bag that they used to, at that time, if we were out in the country, they'd bury the plastic bag in the gravel just so you could see some white of it. And Doug's job was to pull up so that Terry opened the door and stepped on that bag, because he didn't want anybody to ever say that he didn't run every single step of the way.
So the last step he takes at night, he walks into the van, and they say, right here is where I'm starting.
Yep.
The next day.
Yeah.
My foot will go on that bag, and then I will start, and then I will go.
Yes. And if that was not available, he would go over and touch a signpost, a telephone pole,
Sure.
a fire hydrant. And when he got out of the van, that would happen when we were in a build-up area, he would go over and touch that object again. And then that's how he would start his day.
What do you, when you see it though, when you see this, because there's been the movie obviously, which we'll get to, but just how he ran, and like watching the struggle and watching sort of the cadence to his method of running. When you see it, you it's not full on national press yet, but you are here with this kid, and it's like this lonely, barren of highway, and then you guys leave him. So what's going through your head at that moment for you?
We drive off in the darkness. This is the first time. We've let him out. We go up a mile. We stop because he would run mile by mile. That's basically how he was able to do it. He said, I run telephone pole to telephone pole. If I thought of running a marathon every day, I couldn't do it.
Sure.
So we stop, and in the darkness, a transport truck's coming, and I can see him silhouetted in the lights. And it's still dark, and he comes up to the van, and by about the 3rd mile, and the sun's come up, and now I can see his face, that intense look of having to focus on what he was doing, and it sucked the air out of me. And I by about mile 3, I said to his friend Doug, I said, how do you watch this every day? And he said, I don't. And at first I didn't get it. And then I realized for Doug, it was too painful for him to watch him do that. All of this being said, and I want to make it really, really clear, that Terry, when anybody questioned, are you pushing yourself too hard? Are you crazy? What do you think you're doing? His simple, kind answer would be, if I wasn't doing this, I'd be running around a track in British Columbia. So I may as well run across Canada.
It's an amazing way to think about it.
And later that day, in the morning, I saw how he affected people. So now we're in rural New Brunswick, and at the end of a concession road, there's maybe 5, 6 people. The most there ever was 15. And I saw the look on their faces, and I saw how he was affecting these people just by them watching him run. And then that night and the next night, I hear him make his speech, which was basically the same speech in every town. And it was how he lost his leg to cancer, how he was affected because he was in a sick kids hospital in Vancouver at the time. He was 17. He was too old to go in the adult ward, so he was in the sick kids. So he was watching other children with cancer, and they'd be there one day, and then the next day they would have passed away. And as he said, I could have walked away from that, but I couldn't walk away from that. I had to, when I saw that happening, I had to do something. And it was those kids in the cancer ward that gave him the idea, that initially pushed him and then pushed him along the road. So when I hear him speak from the heart, and you see his speeches in the documentaries, and I go back that it was from the heart, it was a pure message, it was one message: we have to find a cure for cancer. It never changed, and again, I saw how his message to people resonated, and I came back to Ontario realizing that if he comes to Ontario, when we get into a populated area, this thing's going to explode.
Right. I was only 4, I guess, when that happened. I was only 4 when the run was going on. So it was, I grew up in Oshawa, so I know there was a big deal in Oshawa.
Oshawa, yeah.
And that sort of whole thing. I just, given the status that everyone puts on celebrity now, right? And this was way before, obviously, social media, before the net, before anything. The growth of his movement, it just exploded, and it literally becomes national news, and all the rest of it. What is your day-to-day like change at that point?
Well, it really changed when we crossed the border into Ontario. We had a very, very good reception in Montreal. Don Sweet, the Alouette football player, ran with Terry, with a number of other people. The radio station in Toronto that was our big supporter from the very beginning, a gentleman by the name of Jeremy Brown, got the Montreal radio station to cover there. Then we come across to Hawkesbury in Ontario to a high school marching band, to a crowd of 300 or 400 people, and it's into Ottawa. Terry does the kickoff at the Saskatchewan-Ottawa game, which, by the way, was not what the original plan was. The original plan was I'd actually had him take a day off in Montreal so that we would arrive in Ottawa for July the 1st. And my idea, although there was nothing firmed up, was to take him to Parliament Hill and try and get him on TV. Well, we're in the lobby of the Four Seasons Hotel, which had come on board as a big-time sponsor, raised thousands of dollars, and actually were part of the annual Terry Fox run. And somebody came to us and said, they want you to kick the football off at the game. So I go to Terry and I went, well, I was going to go to Parliament Hill, but I've got nothing. I can't guarantee anything, or we can go to do this. And he said, I'd rather go to a football game,
right,
based on that. And we're downstairs in the stadium waiting for them, and Terry's practicing. It's a hockey rink underneath the stadium at that time. And he's trying to kick the ball. He's afraid he's going to fall. He's really nervous. And anyway, somebody yells, okay, we're ready for you. And we come up the stairs. We're coming through the opening. And I remember thinking to myself, I hope they know who he is. And as we came out, the announcer goes, ladies and gentlemen, and Terry doesn't even get to the sidelines when the place goes crazy. A standing ovation that goes on and on. And we go to center field, and we're with 3 members of each team, and they're talking to Terry, and they're saying, as athletes, there's no way that we could possibly do what you're doing. You are the greatest. Mm-hmm. This is coming from professional athletes. And when that happened, I went, it's working. It's working. And then we go off down to along Highway 7, heading towards Toronto. And those little towns that I had gone to before, if there was 300 people in town, there were 600 people waiting for him. And by the way, 40 years later, almost every single one of those towns either have a monument or a mural.
If he ran
or
through
a
the
plaque
town,
saying
if he
Terry
ran through the
Fox
town,
came
or
through.
just at a tribute.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like he had run through this town, so we're going to pay tribute
Yep.
to him. Wow. And did you have to go back? Was there like, hey, we missed this town, we got to go back, or
No.
or they want you to come back another whatever?
Never went back. Never
No.
forward. I'm never
Always forward.
back. Always. And
Right.
here's the other thing: is a couple instances, and it's a long story which I won't get to. But in Sault Ste. in Wawa, he had hurt his leg,
Yeah.
and we had to take him to a hospital, and it was either Thunder Bay or Sault Ste. Marie, and he said, "I won't go forward.
Or we'll go backward.
You have to go backwards,
Oh, yeah.
even at
Yeah.
a lunch break."
Yeah.
So he's going to take lunch. You had to find a restaurant that we had passed. You could never go to a restaurant that was up the road
Gotcha.
because he wanted to see the road for the first time when he ran it. Every night before he ran, he had this big, thick Reader's Digest book of Canada, Atlas,
Wow.
and he would read about where he was going to run the next day and look at pictures and stuff like that.
How does his what's his brain like at this point? So I mean, it was sort of minor at this. He had already put the work in. He'd already ran from, for half the, or a third of the country. But then it blows up. So now his press schedule is doubled, or everything is doubled. Is he getting frustrated, or is it I don't want to be a celebrity, but I do want to be a celebrity? Like it kind of would have been
Not
crazy
yet.
at that point, right?
At that particular point, he's just happy that it seems to be building, that his message seems to be getting out. And remember, his message was one message and one message only: we have to find a cure for cancer.
Right.
So that's why we had it.
Thanks for stopping by, friends, to the Brenton on Tour podcast channel on YouTube. Coffee, music, travel, life, all of those things. One page, lots of guests, lots of chatter. We talk about all of it. If you like it, subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment. I'll get back to you. Thanks, friends. See you next time.